Why would you refuse a blood transfusion? In this video, I want to address one of the most controversial manifestations of Christian religious practice in the Western world, and that's when you see these headlines lambasting these parents whenever they refuse to give their child. So whenever these Jehovah's Witness parents refuse life-saving blood transfusions for their sickly children, that's when we see these reports in the papers. And the scriptures they use to support these beliefs are, "But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. For it is the life of all flesh, its blood sustains its life. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off. That you abstain from things offered to idols, from blood," etc. So the Jehovah's Witness believes that if they consume blood, they will be cut off from everything, including the resurrection. When Charles Taze Russell founded the Zion's Watchtower Tract Society in 1881, blood transfusion wasn't a very popular thing. The first documented successful blood transfusion to be carried out on a woman had been done in 1818 by Dr. James Blundell, and blood types weren't discovered until 1901 by Dr. Landsteiner. That's Dr. Karl Landsteiner, an Austrian physician. As the Jehovah's Witnesses emerged from Pastor Russell's legacy, they kept a rather open mind about blood transfusions at first. Indeed, they thought that it was a matter of conscience. It was between God and man, and so they didn't put out any dictums that had to be adhered to by the whole church. However, this would change after 1945, and then it would change again. See, on September 15th, 1961, the Watchtower put out, with respect to the sanctity of blood, that God's law is violated by infusion of blood, plasma, red blood cells, and various blood fractions. They all violate God's law, even if it's from your own blood. Like if you store your own blood away for future use, that's still a violation of God's law. However, this would change again in the year 2000 so that some fractions would be permissible. Indeed, hemoglobin's widely accepted by Jehovah's Witnesses. And I believe the implications here are rather severe, because between issues of the Watchtower, if you seek to adhere to these acceptable life-saving interventions, then you could, hypothetically allow a loved one to perish, or a loved one could allow themselves to perish through their adherence to what they believe to be the correct interpretation with regards to the Watchtower's tracts. But then later on, a relative could discover that in fact, no, it's changed. So what does that mean? What does that make God's law, his divine law? Who's sussing that out? These mistakes are massive, and the fact is, I don't like the fact that it's so coercive, that the Jehovah's Witnesses will have hospital liaison officers and other staff who will go out and then meet doctors and petition them to try bloodless interventions and other treatments so that their adherents don't stray from the path. And this is very coercive and controlling, and I believe it's counterintuitive to a healthy spiritual walk. There's a lot of peer pressure there, and there's a threat of shunning and ostracization. It is important to remember, however, that Jehovah's Witnesses are not against medical care. They take their loved ones to hospitals because they do want them to get better. It's just the fact that they hold to this belief that blood or certain fractions of blood must not be injected or transfused. And it's said that there's a rogue number of Jehovah's Witnesses who secretly go against this blood ban. And it will soothe some of your consciences to know, if you're riled by this sort of thing, that most countries enforce blood transfusions upon children, and it's mostly teenagers that these legal battles happen with. And I'm not too happy about that either, because I believe that you should be a consenting adult before you can adhere to a religion properly. And so for your parents to make choices that could rob you of your life before you've reached the maturity to decide whether or not you're going to adhere to this faith yourself, that's a real sticky wicket for me. Am I using that term properly? I don't really use that word. Why do I do that? I just use words I've never used before when I make YouTube videos. And it should also be said that there's a number of Jehovah's Witnesses who will not follow these dictums due to the some capitulation to a tyrannical church. They're doing this because they have a heartfelt belief that this is a standard of righteousness. This is something that they've assumed and want to walk rightly in. And there's benefits as well. In the 1980s, when there was the AIDS and HIV scare with blood transfusions, they didn't have to deal with that. And of course, they probably would have bled out and died with their no blood cards and stuff, but they didn't catch AIDS. And another thing that should be said is actually there's wider societal benefits to be gained from medical staff and technicians, technologists, doctors, engineers. They all come together and they can come up with technology that can actually limit blood loss during surgery, and this has actually been trialled on Jehovah's Witnesses. And so there is a wee benefit there, sort of economic argument, supply and demand. But here's my main gripe. The understanding that Jehovah's Witnesses have, their discernment is way off here. Leviticus 3:17. This shall be a perpetual statute throughout your generations in all your dwellings. You shall eat neither fat nor blood. Do Jehovah's Witnesses eat fat? But they don't eat blood, they don't consume blood at all. What's going on here? Well, clearly, as the Jews themselves understand, this is about eating. Okay, this is about eating blood. That's what was forbidden. Transfusion didn't exist, nor was it addressed in the Bible. Now, it could be said that transfusions is an even more intimate form of consumption, but I think that's a rather tenuous way of arguing. For you could say, transfusion's a beautiful thing as it parallels the blood that Christ transfused for us, his sacrifice, his spilling of blood that covers us. And love knows no greater than this, that man should lay down his life, and the blood is life, for his friends. Now we know what the Mosaic laws were for. They were to set apart the Hebrews from the pagans. This dictum is concerned with the blood of animals. To eat the blood of animals is to do as the pagans do. That's why fat is mentioned in Leviticus 3:17. Clearly, blood transfusion was not the heart of the matter. So it should be a matter of conscience. And the final and most resounding point I've heard is that blood is a symbol for life. To let a person's life expire to protect the sanctity of the symbol is like sacrificing your wife to save your wedding ring. Love is the sovereign law. What man is there among you who has one sheep, and if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath will not lay hold of it and lift it out? Of how much more worth is a man than a sheep? Therefore it's lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. If life equals blood, then transfusion equals Christ-like. Thanks for watching. And the Jehovah's Witnesses have a lot of end times prophecies and a lot of literature there, so I'd like to deal with the Jehovah's Witnesses again. Not that I have a particular gripe against them, I just find they're an interesting sect. This is just my wee idea that I'm putting out there. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. All the best.